The twin suns of Zelthara shined brightly above the royal arena. Thousands of alien spectators filled the stone seats, their voices roaring in excitement. Banners waved. Drums echoed like thunder. This was no ordinary day. Today, a human would fight in the arena of honor, a place where only the strongest warriors survived. Marcus stood quietly in the center of the arena. He wore simple armor, a single sword on his back, and a calm face. He was not a champion. He was not a warlord. He was just a human lost, outnumbered, and falsely accused. Above him, on a grand throne carved from crystal, sat Princess Lyrantha. Her silver eyes narrowed as she looked down at the man below. She wore golden robes, her long violet hair braided with jewels. To her, Marcus was nothing more than a joke, a savage, a soft, weak creature who would die before the first strike. Behind her stood the royal champion General Vokthal, over 9 feet tall, built like a beast with skin like armor and fangs like knives. He had never lost a fight, not once. And today, he would kill Marcus to defend the honor of the royal bloodline. The announcer's voice boomed through the arena. By the law of the Empire, the outsider shall fight for his life. If he wins, he walks free. If he loses, he dies as all traitors must. The gates opened. Vokthal stomped into the arena, carrying a giant plasma axe. The crowd cheered his name. Marcus only tightened the grip on his sword. He wasn't here to be a hero. He just wanted to live. The two men faced each other. One a legend, the other a stranger. The fight began. Vokthal moved first, swinging his axe like a falling mountain. Marcus rolled under the blow, dust flying in all directions. The crowd gasped. He was fast, but could he survive? More attacks came, powerful, wild. Vokthal fought like a storm. But Marcus moved with calm focus, dodging left, sliding right. He waited for an opening. One moment. One mistake. It came. Vokthal raised his axe high for a final crushing blow. Marcus stepped in, swift like lightning, and slashed upward with all his strength. There was silence. Then dash crack. Vokthal stood frozen. His chest opened. Blood and steam sprayed into the air. The giant dropped his weapon. A second later, his body split in half, collapsing in 2 pieces on the red sand. Gasps. Screams. Silence again. Princess Lyrantha rose from her throne. Face pale, her champion was dead, slain by a human. This had never happened before. Ever. Marcus stood alone, breathing hard, sword dripping with blood. He looked up at the princess. She stared back, eyes wide, lips trembling with rage and shock. In that moment, everything changed. The council members whispered to each other. The guards lowered their weapons. The people, once shouting for his death, were now silent with awe. The princess clenched her fists. This was not supposed to happen, and worst of all, she knew the law. The ancient rule carved into the stones of the empire. He who defeats the royal champion in a trial of honor shall claim the rights of the throne's concubines until death or surrender. Marcus didn't know it yet, but by their own law, the princess and her royal maids now belonged to him. Marcus stood over the split body of the champion, breathing heavy but steady. Blood soaked the sand beneath him, and his sword steamed in the air. The crowd was still silent, frozen in disbelief. It wasn't just a victory. It was a challenge to everything they believed. Far above him, Princess Lyrantha sat stiff on her throne. Her heart beat faster than ever before. She had seen hundreds of warriors die, but never like this. Never so fast. Never so clean. She had mocked the human when he entered. Now she couldn't look away. But then, a sound broke the silence. It was the rustling of old parchment. A scroll, gold-trimmed, intent, was being read aloud by the High Speaker of Law. His voice cracked with age but carried across the entire arena. By decree of the first emperor, Should any outsider defeat the royal champion in single combat within the arena of honor, the throne shall fulfill the binding of submission. The victor shall be granted royal concubines, beginning with the royal heir, and her personal attendants as reward and claim. Whispers turned to gasps. A few nobles fainted. Even the guards looked at each other in fear. Marcus blinked, confused. He didn't understand the language, but Lorantha did. Her cheeks turned red, not from shame, but from fury. She rose slowly, her voice trembling. This law is ancient. It cannot apply to him. He's not of noble blood. He's not even of this world. The council remained silent. The law was clear. It had not been broken in 5,000 years, and to break it now would risk rebellion, dishonor, and war. Two guards approached Marcus, not with weapons, but with royal banners. One handed him a medallion of victory. The other simply bowed. The human had just earned a title, not prisoner, not criminal. He was now chosen of the blade. Princess Lorantha turned and stormed out of the arena, her long royal robe trailing behind her. Her 7 royal maids, dressed in silk and silver, followed quickly, eyes full of confusion and fear. None dared speak a word. Back inside the palace, Lorantha threw a vase against the wall. I will not serve that thing. He is no king, he's a killer. The head maid Sella bowed her head. But princess, the law is clear. I am the law, she snapped. But her voice cracked as she said it. Deep inside, she knew the truth. Even her father had once said, the law protects us until it chooses someone else. That night, Marcus was brought into the golden chambers of the palace. Instead of chains, he was given silk robes. Instead of guards, he was flanked by servants. He didn't understand why everything had changed, but he felt something was wrong. Too quiet, too careful. He sat alone in a room too large for comfort. Then the doors opened. The princess entered, flanked by her maids. They stood in a line before him, silent, tense, glowing under candlelight. Lorantha stepped forward, her eyes cold. Human, she said sharply, you have no idea what you've done. Marcus tilted his head, calm but firm. I just didn't want to die, she smiled bitterly. And now you have 7 women who legally belong to you. I don't want anyone to belong to me, he replied. Those words struck her more deeply than she expected, and for the first time she realized. The human wasn't here to conquer, he was just trying to survive. Princess Lorantha stared out the palace window as darkness fell over Zelthara. The twin moons rose slowly, casting pale blue light across the city. Her heart was heavy, burning with something she refused to name. Shame, anger, fear. She was royalty. The blood of rulers flowed in her veins. She had trained in strategy, politics, and bladecraft since she was 5. And yet, a single human, someone she had mocked as primitive, had not only killed her champion, but, by law, made her his concubine. Unacceptable. She turned from the window and stormed down the marble hallway, her heels echoing like gunshots. Behind her, her maids followed nervously, none daring to speak. Lorantha's hands shook with rage. But not just at Marcus, no, at herself, at the council. At the dead champion who had failed her. She entered the quiet chamber where Marcus had been resting. He sat at a low table, drinking something warm. He looked up, surprised to see her but calm as always. You, she growled. Marcus stood slowly. Princess. She hated the way he said it, so respectful, so calm. He didn't look afraid. He didn't look proud either. Just peaceful. Lorantha pulled a hidden dagger from her dress and pressed it to his throat. I am not yours, she whispered. Marcus didn't flinch. Then leave. She paused, confused. What? I won't stop you, he said gently. I didn't ask for this. I never wanted to own anyone. If you want to leave, go. She stared at him, trying to find any trace of a lie, but there was none. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't playing games. He was simply being honest. And that made her angrier than anything else. No warrior would show mercy now, she hissed. Why don't you fight me? Prove your dominance like your kind should. Marcus stepped back and sat down again. I don't want to dominate anyone. Those words. They broke something inside her. Not because they were weak, but because they were stronger than anything she had ever heard from the warlords of her empire. She lowered the dagger. Slowly. Her hand trembled. The maids behind her exchanged glances. For the first time they saw a new expression on their princess's face. Confusion. Silence filled the chamber for a long while. Then Marcus said, What do you really want, princess? Lorantha opened her mouth, but no answer came. She had always known what she wanted. Power, control, loyalty. But now, standing before this human, she wasn't sure anymore. She turned and stormed out without another word. Later that night, in her private chamber, she couldn't sleep. She sat in the dark, clutching her dagger, replaying his words over and over in her head. I didn't ask for this. I won't stop you. I don't want to dominate anyone. Why did it bother her so much? Why did it feel like she was the one being judged? She remembered how the warlords of her court used to boast, how they treated her like a trophy, and how this human who could have claimed her as property by law treated her like a person instead. And that scared her more than any blade ever could. The royal palace of Zelthara was built with crystal walls and golden floors. But behind the beauty hid 1,000 quiet whispers. Especially now. Since the human had defeated the champion, everything felt strange. The guards walked softer. The nobles avoided eye contact. The laws were being followed, but hearts were uneasy. Everyone feared change. But none more than the royal maids. Sela, the eldest of the 7 maids, moved through the halls with slow grace. She had served the princess for over a decade. She knew her moods, her fury, her pride. But now, something had shifted. Lorantha was quieter. She hadn't shouted in days. She hadn't slept well either. It wasn't just the princess. The other maids were restless too. In secret, at night, they gathered in the servants' kitchen, where no guards listened. He's not like the others, whispered Nira, the youngest, her long green fingers curled around a teacup. He looks into your eyes when he speaks. He said thank you to me, said Jalvi, blinking. No royal has ever done that. I served him food, and he asked if I had eaten, said another softly. Sela listened, her face unreadable. These things were small, but they meant something. He could have ordered us to his bed, one maid whispered. But he didn't. He just asked for more blankets. The room went quiet. In a world where power meant control, Marcus was doing something dangerous. He was offering respect. Sela leaned forward, her voice low. We must be careful. Kindness can be a trap. But what? Nira asked. Sela hesitated. But I think this man might be good. The others nodded slowly. Not because they were sure, but because, in their hearts, they wanted to believe it. The next morning, Princess Lorantha called for Sela. She stood by the window, her long robe flowing, hands behind her back. Have the maids spoken to the human? Yes, princess, Sela answered. Do they obey him? They serve him, but not as concubines. He treats them like guests. Lorantha turned, her face tired. And how do they feel about that? Sela paused. They are confused. Princess, afraid, curious. Do they like him? A long silence. Yes, Sela finally said. Lorantha's jaw clenched. Not because she hated the answer, but because she feared it. She wasn't angry at Marcus anymore. She was angry at how easily he was winning without trying. That night, the princess sat alone in her garden. The wind was cold, but she didn't return inside. She was thinking of how many men had tried to win her with gold, power, threats. None had succeeded, yet this human, with no crown, no army, no throne, had made her feel something she had never known. Choice. Far beyond the glowing cities of Zelthara, in the cold shadows of the iron moons, a transmission played on repeat. Vokthale is dead, slain by a human, in the arena of honor. The war room fell silent. The warriors inside wore black armor and red scars. They stared at the screen like it was a lie. Only one of them didn't flinch, Krezzer, the brother of the fallen champion. He stood slowly, fists clenched, eyes burning. "A human?" he growled. "A human dared split my brother in two." Krezzer wasn't like Vokthal, where Vokthal followed tradition. Krezzer followed only rage. He had no love for the royal court. But now, with his brother dead and the princess tied to the human by law, he saw an opportunity. "Prepare the fleet," he said coldly. "I will burn the throne and tear the human apart in front of her." In Zelthara, the sky darkened days earlier than expected. Marcus stood on the palace balcony, watching strange clouds roll in. But they weren't clouds. They were warships. Thousands. Princess Lerantha burst into the chamber, her face pale. "It's Krezzer," she said. "He's coming for revenge." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I thought this was settled." "He doesn't care about the law," she replied. "He's not here for justice. He's here to destroy everything." The royal council was called at once. Old men with golden collars argued. Some wanted to surrender Marcus to Krezzer. Others said the empire must stand firm. But no one offered a real plan. Lerantha stood up. "You all speak of fear. You forget what fear did in the arena. It died at his feet." She pointed to Marcus. The council gasped. "You would trust him again?" "I wouldn't," she said. "But I do believe he can fight." Marcus looked at her, surprised. It was the first time she had spoken in his defense. He turned to the council. "If Krezzer wants blood, I'll give him a reason to choke on it." The next day, Krezzer's fleet hovered above the city. His voice thundered across all channels. "Send me the human in chains, or I will crush your palaces and drown your people in fire." There was no reply. Instead, the gates of the palace opened, and Marcus walked out alone, wearing the armor of a champion. Krezzer watched from above. "Fool," he sneered. "He comes alone?" But Marcus wasn't alone. Behind him, Lerantha walked out, and so did her maids. Not dressed as servants, but as warriors. The people of Zelthara watched from rooftops, holding their breath. Marcus looked up at the sky, calm as always. "You want war?" he whispered. "Then come down and face me." The sky above Zelthara cracked with lightning as Krezzer's warship descended. It roared like a wounded beast, casting shadows over the golden palace. Thunder shook the city, not from storms, but from cannons charging in orbit. But Marcus didn't blink. He stood at the top of the palace steps, his armor dented from past battles, his sword strapped across his back. He looked small compared to the ship landing before him, but still. He waited. Then came the crash. A metal ramp slammed to the ground, and out stepped Krezzer, massive, brutal, and covered in black steel. His eyes were wild, and his two-handed axe glowed red-hot from energy cells burning underneath. His voice was a growl. "You killed my brother," Marcus nodded. "He gave me no choice." "Then I give you none," Krezzer hissed. He didn't wait. He charged. The ground shook with each step. Marcus stepped forward too, but slower, focused. The clash was instant. Krezzer swung his massive axe, and Marcus barely rolled aside. The blade crushed the stone where he had stood. Sparks flew. The shockwave knocked guards off their feet. The duel began. Every strike from Krezzer was meant to kill. Every swing from Marcus was meant to survive. He ducked, spun, blocked. Steel rang against steel. Flames burst around them from each collision. In the palace, Lerantha and her maids watched from the tower. Her hands gripped the railing tight. Her heart pounded, not from fear of losing the city, but fear of losing him. Marcus fought without anger. That was his secret. Krezzer burned with rage, but rage blinded him. When the warlord shouted and raised his axe high for a crushing blow, Marcus rolled low and struck deep across Krezzer's thigh. Blood spilled. Krezzer roared, "You fight like a rat." "No," Marcus replied, stepping back. "I fight to end things." The battle moved across the landing ramp and into Krezzer's own ship. Flames lit the walls. Emergency lights flashed red. As they fought in narrow halls and burning corridors, crew members fled, alarms blaring. Krezzer smashed a pipe, spraying fire across Marcus's chest. The human screamed, but stayed standing. Burned, bleeding but alive. And still holding his sword. Then came the moment. Krezzer grabbed Marcus by the throat and slammed him against a wall. "You don't belong here," he growled. Marcus, choking, raised his hand and pressed a hidden button on his wrist. A magnetic pulse shot out. The ship shook. Suddenly, the power grid crashed. Lights went out. The ship began to fall. They were now dueling inside a dying beast. Krezzer released him and stumbled as gravity shifted. "What did you do?" "I leveled the playing field," Marcus said. The hallway tilted. Sparks rained down. Fires spread. The floor cracked open as the ship began a slow dive toward the planes outside the city. Their fight didn't stop. They fell together into the cargo bay, now tilted like a death slide. Krezzer tried to swing one last time, but Marcus caught the handle and twisted, slamming his sword straight through the warlord's chest. Krezzer gasped. "You can't win." Marcus leaned in close. "I already did." He pulled the blade free. Krezzer fell. The ship crashed. Seconds later, exploding in a ball of light on the edge of the desert. Back in the city, everyone watched the sky. Silent. Then a figure walked out of the smoke, burned, bleeding, breathing. Marcus Irantha, as eyes filled with tears. He had returned, not just alive, but victorious. The city of Zelthara stood in silence as the smoke cleared over the plains. The great warship, Krezzer's pride, was now nothing but black metal and broken fire. Soldiers, nobles, and even common folk gathered at the city edge. No one spoke. They all waited. Then, from the ashes, he walked out. Marcus. His armor was scorched, his face bloodied, but his back was straight and his eyes steady. In one hand, he held his cracked sword. In the other, Krezzer's fallen banner. He dropped it at the gates of the city. "I'm done," he said quietly. Cheers didn't come at first, just quiet gasps. Then someone knelt, then another, and another. Soon thousands bowed, not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to. Even the council, once fearful and proud, stood and lowered their heads. But Marcus didn't care for thrones. He walked straight to the palace steps. Princess Lyrantha waited there. Her royal robes changed. No crown, no makeup. Just her true face, calm, bare, and trembling. He stopped in front of her. "I release you," he said. She blinked. "What?" "You were tied to me by law," Marcus said. "But I never believed in chains. You're free, all of you." Behind her, the 7 maids stood quietly. Each looked at each other, waiting, watching. Marcus turned to leave, but then Sella, the head maid, stepped forward. "We don't want freedom," she said softly. "Not from you." Marcus paused. "We want choice," added Nira. One by one, they walked toward him, not as property, not as servants, as women who had made their own decision. And then the princess stepped forward, heart pounding. "You changed everything," she whispered. "Not with power, not with fear, but with honor." She reached for his hand. "This time," she said, "I choose you." He looked into her eyes, not as a warrior, not as a ruler, but as a man, and she smiled, finally letting her pride go. The people of Zelthara watched, not with fear or shame, but hope. Because for the first time in their history, a man had taken nothing by force and earned everything by heart.